PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, the most hated, not hated game of all time. Everything about this game is strange, but not in a way that's obvious at first glance. It's like something from a parallel universe. It's a party fighting game made by a giant gaming company cashing in on its most popular characters. Sounds perfectly normal, except when you find out what the roster actually looks like, it all seems very confused and uncomplimentary. Like I said earlier, this weird everything but move it one step to the left approach applies to the reviews as well. Any videos I've seen made on PlayStation All-Stars or conversations I've had about it with other people have viewed it as just a bland disappointment that they gave up playing after a few hours. Yet, when you go on news outlets and sites like Metacritic, the positive reviews tend to outnumber the negative ones. After revisiting this game for the first time in years, I discovered that I actually agree with this approach in a way. All-Stars has all of the factors for a successful crossover fighting game, but when it actually comes to putting these factors into practice, the game always takes a jarring, out-of-left-field approach that causes it to fall flat on its face. Let's start with the game's opening cinematic, which admittedly isn't that important to the overall quality. It's pretty standard for one of these kinds of games. A bunch of fan-favorite PlayStation characters battling it out to some cool music. Except everyone is moving at like 0.75x speed, and it's really dark for some reason, so I can barely tell what's going on half the time. It's random choices like these, which I think are being made to avoid the dreaded label of Smash Brothers clone, that cause PlayStation All-Stars to trip at the finish line. Okay, let's get into the actual game. And since no one wanted to play this game with us, we're just gonna start off with the solo arcade mode. While we're here, let's talk about the roster, as it's one of the biggest points of contention with the game for most people. The roster kind of makes PlayStation look bad, with inclusions like Sweet Tooth, Good and Evil Cole, and Fat Princess. It makes it seem like the company is starving for good IPs and barely has enough characters to fill the starting roster. But at the same time, they left out some obvious inclusions like Crash or Spyro, although I wouldn't be surprised if this was because of contracts that were out of their control. Still, even if the only thing I knew about Dante is that he's from the Devil May Cry series, a good fighting game should be able to sell the player on all of the characters in its roster. Isn't that kind of the point of these things? To lure video game company fans in with characters they know and convince them to play more of the company's games by having them play characters they don't know? Super Smash Bros. Was my introduction to a lot of Nintendo characters like Samus, Ness, or Pikachu, and I'm pretty sure it was one of the first times I even saw Kirby, which is a franchise I would end up loving in the future. Unfortunately, the gameplay of All-Stars doesn't keep you around long enough to encourage you to try out these new characters, so most people will only end up playing half of the roster and ignoring the rest as the weird cousins of the PlayStation family. Speaking of gameplay, before we jump into that, there are cutscenes and they are good. Most of them are just bonus content for characters you like to watch, and sometimes they have little crossover moments that are also fun to watch. Unlocking them is probably the only reason you'll play the arcade mode, and I'm about to discuss why that's the case. PlayStation All-Stars has very similar gameplay to Smash. 2 to 4 players are dropped in a set arena with a variety of platforms and obstacles to spice up the combat, and there are 20 different items that can spawn onto the board to give the less skilled players a chance to get back in the fight. The roster contains a variety of playstyles, but most characters fall into the same pattern of square for a basic attack, triangle for a range/strong attack, and circle for a special move, with variations on these attacks based on the direction of the joystick or the player's position in the air. Near the end of the fight, the stage is invaded by another game and various stage hazards are implemented to shake up the battle. But All-Stars is not a Smash clone, guys. This is not just Sony trying to cash in on Nintendo's success. It's not a clone! The main difference between All-Stars and Smash Bros. Is the kill system. In most fighting games, each player has a set health bar that you chip away at with normal attacks, and super attacks are simply a way to speed up that process. But in PlayStation All-Stars, you can only kill other players using super attacks. There's only an AP bar in this game. The health bar was lost in the chaos of development. This is a decision that feels like it was only made for the sake of being different from other popular fighting games, and I appreciate they had the courage to try something new, but original does not automatically equal good. It's nice to see variety in these kinds of games, but sometimes changing something that already works just makes it worse. The super only kill system was a terrible decision. In most fighting games, every moment counts because with each hit you land, you bring your opponent one step closer to defeat. This forces players to think critically about every action they take, and allows for clever combinations combinations of offensive and defensive approaches that make these games so rewarding to play. It also enables anyone to turn the game around and last-minute victories when the fight comes down to the wire. In PlayStation All-Stars, your fighter is basically reduced to their super. Most of the level 3 supers are balanced in how powerful they are, but the level 1 and 2 supers vary wildly in quality, with some of them reaching across the board and others only reaching a few steps ahead. Any time between these supers feels pretty meaningless, as it doesn't really matter what kind of hits or what combination you use because you can't die. It only matters that you get the AP gauge up. For me, this makes the game really hard to get into because it feels very button mashy and doesn't force you to develop your own complex strategies. Oh well, we can just mash our way through all these fights, then we'll get to see the cool cutscenes. Just one more round of the arcade mode to go before we beat it. Why is the screen still black? Oh! It crashed and there's no way to get out of it besides restarting the PS3. I'm sorry guys, I'm done with this game. I know I've been pretty tough on PlayStation All-Stars throughout this video. All of the strange little decisions, from the confusing roster to the limiting super-only kill system, started to pile up and get on my nerves. Still, the way the crossover cutscenes are written, the creative designs of the level 3 supers, and just the overall numerous homages paid to beloved PlayStation video games makes me feel like the people behind this project really did want to make a Super Smash Bros. For PlayStation fans. Not because it could make them a lot of money, but because it would be a fun experience. While there was a small but loyal fanbase for this game, All-Stars only got 4 DLC characters before being left to the wayside. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was a few steps away from success in most areas, and I think some developmental roadblocks prevented it from becoming the next big party fighting game. Unfortunately, fun character crossovers and novel references for fans can't save the unbalanced, boring combat system at the core of All-Stars. I think the character select screen sums it up best. There's a lengthy roster of memorable characters, all here to represent the games that their fans love so much. Just ignore the black void of fire in the background.